There are rituals that develop between humans and animals that seem inexplicable until you understand that love creates its own language. And for Staff Sergeant Michael Chen, a combat medic with the 82nd Airborne Division, that language was spoken by a three-legged tortoiseshell cat named Compass, who performed the same impossible act 11 times across 14 years. And each time Michael left for another deployment to Iraq or Afghanistan or Syria, Compass would disappear from their home in Fayetteville, North Carolina, would vanish completely for exactly 3 days, and would return on the morning of day 4 carrying something in her mouth. Carrying an object that seemed random until Michael's sister started keeping a list and noticed that every single item Compass brought back was something Michael had mentioned needing during his previous deployment, had mentioned once in passing months earlier. And the cat was somehow remembering and retrieving these specific objects, as if she understood that her human was going back to war and needed to be prepared. The first time it happened, Michael thought it was coincidence. Thought that when Compass disappeared 2 days before his first deployment to Mosul in 2009, she was just being a cat, just wandering the neighborhood the way cats do. And when she came back on the morning he was scheduled to fly out, came back with a small flashlight in her mouth, a mini mag light that still worked. Michael laughed and told his sister Sarah, who was house-sitting, that maybe Compass knew he was afraid of the dark. Knew it as a joke, and Sarah put the flashlight in Michael's duffel bag and he took it to Iraq. And 3 months into that deployment, when Michael was working on a wounded soldier in a building, with no power during a firefight, when he needed light to see the arterial bleed he was trying to stop, he used that flashlight. Used the light that his three-legged cat had somehow known to bring him. The second deployment came 8 months later, came after a brief stateside rotation, and 3 days before Michael was scheduled to leave for Kandahar. Compass disappeared again, vanished in the same way. And Sarah called Michael worried, because the cat had never done this before the first deployment. Had never been a runner, and Michael told her not to worry. Told her Compass would come back, and on the morning of day 4, Compass returned with a small sealed bag of coffee in her mouth. One of those sample pouches from a specialty shop downtown. And Michael looked at the cat and remembered that during his last deployment he had complained to Sarah over satellite phone about the terrible coffee on base. Had mentioned it once in a 15-minute call 3 months earlier, and Compass had remembered. If you are watching this and thinking that animals operate on instinct alone, that they cannot understand human needs or remember human complaints or perform acts of service that seem to require reasoning, subscribe to this channel right now, because what happened over the next 11 deployments will prove that some animals are paying attention in ways that science has not fully explained. Hit that like button if you have ever had a pet that seemed to know what you needed before you knew it yourself. And leave a comment telling me what city and country you are watching from. Because this story belongs to everyone who has ever underestimated the intelligence of the animals who choose to love us. Deployment 3, 4, and 5 followed the same pattern. Followed it exactly. And Sarah started documenting everything. Started writing down when Compass disappeared, when she returned, what she brought, and the pattern was undeniable. 3 days before deployment 6 to Ramadi, Compass disappeared and returned with a small packet of wet wipes, the kind used for cleaning hands, and Michael remembered complaining about the dust, about how it got into everything and there was never enough water to wash properly. Deployment 7, Compass brought a small sewing kit, and Michael remembered mentioning that his uniform pocket had torn and he had no way to fix it. Deployment 8, a small bottle of hand sanitizer. Deployment 9, a pair of wool socks still in the package. Every single item was something Michael had mentioned needing during a previous tour, had mentioned casually, sometimes months before, and Compass was remembering and retrieving. Sarah started asking questions, started trying to understand how this was possible. And she would follow Compass when the cat disappeared, would try to track where she went. But Compass moved through the neighborhood like smoke. would slip through yards and under fences and through spaces too small for a three-legged cat to navigate. And Sarah could never keep up, could never see where Compass found these items. And some of them were things you could not just find lying around, were things that had to come from stores. And Sarah started to wonder if Compass was somehow stealing these items, was somehow getting into shops or homes and taking what she needed. The most remarkable retrieval happened before Deployment 10. Happened in 2019 when Michael was preparing for what he thought might be his final tour. And he had mentioned to Sarah during a phone call that he wished he had a photo of their mother. Had mentioned that their mom had died when Michael was in high school, and he had no pictures small enough to carry in his wallet. And 2 days later, Compass disappeared on schedule. And when she returned on day 4, she was carrying something in a plastic bag. Carrying it carefully, and inside the bag was a wallet-sized photo of their mother. Was a photo that Sarah recognized as one that had been in their aunt's house across town. Had been in a frame on a shelf, and somehow Compass had gotten into that house. Had removed the photo from the frame. Had protected it in a plastic bag, and had carried it home. Sarah called their aunt, called her panicking because she thought maybe someone had broken in. And their aunt said no one had broken in, but she had noticed the photo was missing from the frame. Had noticed it yesterday and assumed she had misplaced it. And Sarah asked if their aunt had a cat door or an open window, and their aunt said yes. Said she always left the kitchen window cracked for air circulation. And Sarah understood that Compass had somehow known where that photo was. Had known that Michael needed it, had traveled across town to retrieve it. And Sarah stopped trying to explain how because some things cannot be explained, can only be witnessed and accepted. Michael carried that photo through his 10th deployment. Carried it in his left chest pocket every single day. And during a casualty evacuation under fire. During the moment when he was loading a wounded Marine onto a helicopter and rounds were impacting around him. Michael felt something hit his chest, felt an impact that knocked him backward. And when he looked down, he saw that a bullet had struck his tactical vest directly over the pocket where the photo was kept. Had struck the photo and the small metal frame he had put around it to protect it. And the frame had deflected the round enough that it did not penetrate, had saved his life. And Michael looked at that photo later and thought about a three-legged cat who had somehow known he would need his mother with him. Deployment 11 came in 2021, came as the United States was withdrawing from Afghanistan. And Michael was assigned to Kabul for the evacuation. Was going into one of the most dangerous situations of his career. And Compass was 12 years old by then, was moving slower, was sleeping more. And Sarah worried that the cat might not survive another disappearance. Might not have the strength to do what she had always done. And she told Michael maybe this time they should keep Compass inside. Should prevent her from leaving, and Michael said no. Said that Compass had a job and he would not take that job away from her. Would not deny her the chance to help him one more time. Compass disappeared on schedule 3 days before Michael's departure. Disappeared into the August heat, and she was gone for day 1, day 2. And Sarah started to panic on day 3 when Compass did not return. Started to think that maybe the cat had finally gone somewhere to die. Had gone to complete her mission one last time and had not survived it. And Sarah was preparing to tell Michael that Compass was gone when the cat appeared at the back door on the morning of day 4. Appeared looking exhausted and thin but alive. And in her mouth she carried a small laminated card. A card that Sarah recognized as a prayer card from their mother's funeral. A card that Sarah herself had kept in a box in her closet. And Compass had somehow gotten into that closet. Had found that specific box among dozens. Had retrieved that specific card. Michael took that prayer card to Kabul. Took it to the evacuation of Hamid Karzai International Airport. Took it to 13 days of chaos where he treated hundreds of wounded people. Where he worked 20-hour shifts in 100-degree heat. Where he witnessed things that would give him nightmares for years. And on the 13th day, on August 26, 2021, when the suicide bomber detonated at Abbey Gate and killed 13 American service members and 170 Afghan civilians. Michael was 70 meters away, was far enough that the blast wave knocked him down but did not kill him. And he got up and ran toward the explosion, ran toward the wounded. And he worked for 8 straight hours treating casualties. And the entire time he could feel that prayer card in his pocket. Could feel his mother and his cat with him. Michael came home from that deployment different. Came home with the 1,000-yard stare that combat medics develop after seeing too much death. And Sarah noticed that he would not talk about Kabul, would not talk about the bombing. Would spend hours sitting in the backyard with Compass in his lap. And the cat seemed to understand that this time was different. Seemed to know that Michael had brought something dark home with him. And she stopped leaving his side, would follow him from room to room. Would sleep on his chest at night. And Sarah thought that Compass was performing a different kind of rescue now. Was helping Michael survive something that had nothing to do with bullets or bombs. The nightmare started 3 weeks after Michael returned. Started as dreams of the bombing and evolved into something worse. Into dreams where Michael could not save the people who needed saving. Where his hands would not work, where he would reach for supplies that were not there. And he would wake up gasping, and Compass would be there, would be pressing her face against his. Would be purring in that deep rumbling way that cats purr when they are trying to comfort. And Michael told Sarah that Compass was the only reason he was sleeping at all. Was the only thing keeping him from completely falling apart. 6 months after Kabul, Michael made a decision that surprised everyone. Made the decision to medically retire from the army. To leave the career that had defined his adult life. And people asked him why, and he said it was time. Said that he had done 11 deployments and Compass had supported him through all of them. And now it was his turn to be there for her. To spend whatever time she had left, giving back what she had given him. And he moved into a small house near Sarah, got a job as a civilian paramedic, and spent his free time with a 3-legged cat, who had somehow known what he needed 11 times in a row. Compass lived for 2 more years, lived to 14. And during those years Michael took her everywhere. Would bring her to work in a carrier, would take her on trips. Would let her sleep in his bed every night. And he told Sarah that people thought he was crazy. Thought he was one of those pet owners who had lost perspective. But Michael knew something that other people did not know. Knew that Compass had saved his life in ways that went beyond the bullet that hit his vest. Had saved him by giving him a reason to come home. By reminding him before every deployment that someone was waiting. That someone cared enough to remember what he needed and to risk everything to provide it. When Compass died in November 2023, died peacefully in her sleep with Michael holding her. Michael buried her in his backyard under a dogwood tree. And he placed 11 items in the ground with her. Placed the flashlight and the coffee and the wet wipes. And the sewing kit and the hand sanitizer and the socks. And the photo of his mother and the prayer card and 3 other items that he had never told anyone about. Items that Compass had brought him that were too personal to share. And he planted a marker that read Compass, who always brought me home. And Sarah said she had never seen her brother cry until that moment. The story could have ended there. Could have ended with a veteran grieving a cat who had done impossible things. But 3 weeks after Compass died, Michael was cleaning out his closet and found a box he did not recognize. Found a small cardboard box tucked behind his boots, and inside the box were 12 items. Were 12 small objects that included another flashlight, a small first aid kit, a protein bar, a pair of gloves, a compass, a small American flag, and 6 other things that Michael immediately recognized as things he would need. Things that would be useful, things that seemed chosen with purpose. And Michael understood that Compass had prepared for a 12th deployment, had gathered supplies for a mission that never came. And he sat on the floor of his closet and held that box and understood that the cat had been preparing to support him until the very end. Michael donated most of those items to a nonprofit that sends care packages to deployed service members. Donated them because he knew that was what Compass would want those supplies to help someone else. And he kept only the compass, kept it on his desk. And when people asked him about it, he would tell them it was a reminder that some animals love us in ways we do not deserve, in ways that require them to be smarter and braver and more faithful than we ever ask them to be. And Compass had been all of those things. Had been a three-legged cat who had somehow understood that her human went to war and came back and went to war again. And she had found a way to help, had found a way to remember what he needed and to provide it. And Michael said that of all the medals and commendations he had received in 14 years of service, none of them meant as much as knowing that a cat had thought he was worth saving 11 times. There are bonds that form in wartime that civilians cannot fully understand. Bonds between soldiers that are forged under fire and last forever. And Michael says that his bond with Compass was like that. Was a bond that formed because they both understood what it meant to deploy, to leave safety behind, to go into danger. And Compass had deployed with him every single time, had done her mission, had brought him what he needed. And if this story has shown you that animals are capable of memory and reasoning and love that borders on the supernatural, subscribe to this channel for more true stories about the animals who serve alongside the humans who go to war. Hit that like button if you believe that some cats are not just pets but battle buddies. And leave a comment sharing a time when an animal helped you through something impossible. Because these stories matter. These moments when animals prove they are paying attention matter. They remind us that we are never as alone as we think we are. And I will see you in the next story.